My parents told me to skip my master's hooding ceremony to decorate for my golden brother's engagement party. I smiled, of course. That evening, I was on stage getting hooded. When the pictures hit Facebook, Mom texted, "Why would you do this?" I replied, "Because it's my life. Look, I need to tell you about something that happened last month, because I'm still processing it, and honestly, you're the only people who might understand without immediately jumping to, but they're your parents." My mom texted me 3 days before my master's hooding ceremony asking if I could skip it to help set up decorations for my brother's engagement party. Not asking if I'd help after my ceremony. Asking me to miss the whole thing. And when I read that text, sitting in the campus library with my thesis binder in front of me, something inside me went completely silent and cold. Because I already knew something they didn't. Something that was about to burn their entire plan to the ground. I need to rewind here and explain how we even got to this point, because this wasn't just about one ceremony or one party. My name is Maya. I'm 26. I just finished my master's in environmental engineering. I'm the older child in my family, and my brother Arjun is 23, working in sales at our uncle's car dealership. And for as long as I can remember, my job in this family has been to make sure Arjun looks good. I grew up in a house where achievement had two completely different values depending on who earned it. When I was 12, I won second place in the regional science fair. My project was on rainwater harvesting systems for urban apartments. I worked on it for 3 months. My parents came to the fair, smiled for the photo with me and the ribbon, and on the drive home, my dad spent 20 minutes talking about how Arjun had made the school basketball team that week. That was the bigger deal, apparently. Arjun was 9. When I was 16, I got a full scholarship to a good undergraduate program. My mom told her friends about it once, briefly, then spent the rest of the evening talking about Arjun's girlfriend and how pretty she was. The scholarship letter stayed on the kitchen counter for 2 days before I filed it myself. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree, we had a small family dinner. It lasted an hour. 6 months later, when Arjun got his first sales commission check, we had a party that went until midnight. I helped set up that party too. Hung the lights, arranged the chairs, ordered the cake. My parents took pictures of Arjun holding the check like he'd won a championship. The pattern was simple. I could work as hard as I wanted. I could win whatever I wanted. But the family spotlight belonged to Arjun, and my role was to run the lighting booth. I didn't fight it much when I was younger. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was doing this for my own future anyway, not for applause. But the truth is, it did matter. It mattered every single time I saw my parents' eyes glaze over when I talked about my research. It mattered every time they asked me to help with something for Arjun right in the middle of my exam week. It mattered every time I paid for something they needed while they paid for something Arjun wanted. After undergrad, I worked for 2 years before applying to grad school. I saved money. I lived in a small shared apartment with 2 roommates. I ate simple meals. I didn't go on vacations. I was saving for my master's, because I knew I'd need to take out loans and I wanted to minimize the debt. My parents knew I was planning to go back to school. They didn't ask many questions about it. When I got my acceptance letter, my mom said, "That's nice, Beta. Will you still be able to help with Arjun's apartment deposit next month?" I said yes. I always said yes. I gave them $1,500 for Arjun's deposit, even though it wiped out half of what I'd saved that month. The week before I started my master's program, Arjun came home with his girlfriend, Priya. She was sweet, polite, came from a good family. My parents loved her immediately. Within 2 months, my mom was already talking about engagement plans, about how beautiful the wedding would be, about how proud she was that Arjun had found such a perfect match. I was happy for him. I really was. But there was also this small, tired part of me that knew what was coming. I knew that once they started planning that engagement, I'd be expected to help, to pay, to organize, to show up. I just didn't know yet how far they'd actually go. My master's program was 2 years, full-time. I took out a federal student loan to cover tuition and living expenses. It was manageable. The payments wouldn't start until after I graduated, and I already had a job offer lined up with an environmental consulting firm. I was careful. I tracked everything. I knew exactly how much I owed and to whom. 4 months into my program, I got a letter from my bank. It was about a loan disbursement I didn't recognize. The amount was $22,000. The letter said the funds had been transferred to an account I'd never opened. I called the bank immediately. I was on hold for 40 minutes. When I finally got through, The representative told me the loan was taken out in my name 6 weeks earlier. The application had my social security number, my birth date, my address. The signature looked close enough to mine that it had passed verification. But I hadn't signed anything. I asked for copies of the documents. I asked who had access to the account the money went to. The representative said she couldn't give me those details over the phone, but she could flag the account for review. I hung up feeling sick. I went home and checked my credit report. The loan was there, active, in my name. I sat on my bed with my laptop open, staring at the numbers. $22,000. I thought about who had access to my personal documents. Who would even know how to do this? And then I remembered something. 2 months earlier, my mom had asked to borrow my passport and my social security card. She said she needed them to add me as a beneficiary on some family health insurance plan my dad's company was offering. I'd given them to her. I trusted her. She returned them a week later. I didn't think about it again. Until now. I didn't want to believe it. I spent 2 days trying to convince myself it was a mistake, some kind of bank error, maybe identity theft by a stranger. But then Arjun came over to my apartment one evening, excited, talking about how my parents had offered to pay for half of his engagement party. He said they'd given him $11,000 as a gift, told him to plan something really nice for Priya's family, make a good impression. $11,000. Half of $22,000. I felt something crack inside my chest. I smiled at Arjun, congratulated him, wished him luck. After he left, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off and cried for the first time in years. Not because of the money, exactly, but because they'd stolen my future to buy his party. They'd put debt in my name, forged my signature, lied to a bank, and used that money to make sure Arjun looked good in front of his future in-laws. And they thought I'd never find out. The next morning, I went back to the bank. I brought my documents, my loan records, everything. I explained the situation calmly. The bank officer was sympathetic but firm. If I wanted to dispute this, I need to file a police report for identity theft and fraud. I'd need to prove I didn't authorize the loan. I'd need to go through a formal investigation. I asked what would happen to the money that had already been spent. She said if the loan was proven fraudulent, the account it went to would be frozen, and whoever used the funds would be held responsible for repayment. I left the bank with paperwork in my bag and a decision forming in my mind. I didn't do anything yet. I just watched. I waited. I went to classes. I worked on my research. I answered my parents' calls. I smiled when they talked about Arjun's engagement plans. And then, 3 months later, the hooding ceremony date was announced. My program director sent an email to all graduating students. The ceremony would be on a Saturday evening in late April. It was a big deal. Hooding ceremonies aren't like regular graduation. They're smaller, more personal. Your advisor places the academic hood over your shoulders in front of your peers and faculty. It's the moment where you're formally recognized as a master's-level scholar in your field. I've been working toward this for 2 years. For 6 years, if you counted undergrad. For my whole life, really. I forwarded the email to my parents. I told them the date. I asked if they'd be able to come. My mom replied 3 hours later. We'll see, beta. Arjun's engagement party is that same weekend. We'll let you know. I stared at that message for a long time. They didn't even ask what time my ceremony was. They didn't ask if maybe the party could be scheduled differently. They just said they'd see. A week later, my mom called me. She sounded busy, distracted. She said they'd finalized the engagement venue. It was a beautiful hall, very elegant, perfect for Priya's family. The party was scheduled for Saturday evening, the same day as my hooding. She said they'd need my help with decorations that afternoon. She said it would mean a lot to Arjun if I was there to support him. She said the ceremony could wait, couldn't it? Surely the university would let me walk at a later date if I missed this one? I was standing in my apartment when she said this. I looked out the window at the street below. People walking dogs. Kids on bikes. Normal life continuing like nothing was breaking inside me. I asked her if she understood what a hooding ceremony was. If she knew I couldn't just walk at a later date. If she realized this was the culmination of 2 years of work. She sighed. She said, Maya, you've always been so focused on your achievements. This is your brother's big day. Family comes first. You can celebrate your degree later. Right now, we need you to be there for Arjun. And that's when I knew. They weren't going to change. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to see me as anything other than the supporting actress in Arjun's life. But this time, I wasn't going to play that role. I didn't argue with my mom on that call. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "Okay, Mom. I'll be there to help." She sounded relieved. She said, "Thank you, Beta. I knew you'd understand." After I hung up, I sat on my couch for a long time. The apartment was quiet. My thesis was printed and bound, sitting on my desk. My cap and gown were hanging in my closet. The hood I'd receive at the ceremony was deep blue and white, the colors of my field. I thought about all the times I'd put their needs first. All the times I'd paid for things I couldn't afford because they asked. All the times I'd celebrated Arjun's milestones while mine were footnotes. And I thought about that loan. $22,000 in my name. Forged. Stolen. Used to make sure Arjun's engagement looked expensive and impressive. Something settled inside me. It wasn't anger exactly. It was colder than that. It was clarity. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the fraud report I'd started at the bank 3 months earlier, but never filed. I read through it. I checked the dates. I verified the account numbers. Then I called the bank's fraud department. I told them I wanted to move forward with the report. I wanted to file formal charges for identity theft. I wanted the loan investigated and the connected account frozen. The officer walked me through the process. She explained that once I filed, the police would be notified. An investigation would begin. The account that received the fraudulent funds would be locked pending review. Any pending transactions from that account would be canceled. I asked how long it would take. She said initial actions, like freezing the account, would happen within 48 hours. The full investigation could take weeks. I scheduled the report filing for the Wednesday before my ceremony. That would give the system exactly 3 days to process everything before Saturday. After that call, I contacted my program director. I explained that I'd made a significant research breakthrough related to my thesis and that it had been accepted for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. I asked if there was any way to acknowledge that during the hooding ceremony. She was thrilled. She said they'd love to highlight it, especially since I was one of the top students in the program. She asked if she could share the news with the university's communications office for their social media. I said yes. I gave her permission to post about it on the university's official Facebook page the evening of the ceremony. I gave her a photo of me from the lab. I told her my parents didn't use social media much and probably wouldn't see it. That was a lie. My parents were very active on Facebook. My mom checked it multiple times a day. She followed every relative, every family friend, every distant connection from our community. But I wanted them to see it. I wanted everyone to see it. The pieces were in place. All I had to do now was wait and keep smiling. Orchestrated narrative structure across remaining story beats. Good progress. I'm at about 2,400 words now. Let me continue with beat 5, quiet preparation, then beat 6, system turns, beat 7, climax, and beat 8, aftermath. I need to reach around 6,200 to 6,800 words total. Beat 5 should show her filing the reports, coordinating with the university, keeping up appearances. Beat 6 should show the day arriving, systems activating. Beat 7 is the ceremony, the collapse, the text exchange. Beat 8 is the aftermath and her new life. Let me continue. Wednesday morning, I dressed carefully. Professional, but understated. I took the bus downtown to the police station. Filing a fraud report is not dramatic. It's paperwork, forms, signatures, a quiet conversation with an officer who's seen this kind of thing before. I explained the situation calmly. I showed them the loan documents, the signature that wasn't mine, the timeline. I explained that my parents had access to my identification documents and that the money had gone toward my brother's engagement expenses. The officer was a woman in her 40s, tired eyes but kind. She asked if I was sure I wanted to do this. She said once the report was filed, it would trigger an automatic investigation. If evidence supported fraud, my parents could face serious consequences. I said I understood. I said I needed to protect my financial future. She nodded. She processed the report. She gave me a case number. From there, I went back to the bank. I provided the police case number. The fraud department immediately flagged the loan and froze the connected account. They explained that any checks written from that account, any automatic payments scheduled, would now be declined. The account holder would be notified of suspicious activity. I asked when that notification would go out. They said within 24 to 48 hours. That meant Thursday or Friday, right before the party. Perfect. I spent the rest of Wednesday attending class like normal. I met with my thesis advisor. We talked about my research, about the publication, about my plans after graduation. She told me she was proud of me. She said I'd accomplished something meaningful. I thanked her. I didn't tell her that the people who should have been proudest were the ones who'd stolen from me to fund a party. Thursday morning, my phone rang. It was my mom. She sounded stressed but excited. She wanted to go over the decoration plan for Saturday. She needed me to pick up flowers Friday afternoon. She needed me to arrive at the venue by 2 p.m. on Saturday to start setting up tables. I took notes. I agreed to everything. I asked about the color scheme. I asked if she needed me to bring anything else. I sounded helpful and engaged. She didn't know that while we were talking, I was looking at my calendar, confirming that my hooding ceremony started at 6 p.m. and that the university's Facebook post would go live around 6:30, right when I'd be on stage. Friday afternoon, I picked up my cap and gown from the university bookstore. I tried them on in my apartment. The gown fit perfectly. The cap sat straight. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not for anyone else. Just for me. That evening, Arjun called. He sounded nervous, but happy. He said Priya's family was really excited about the party. He said it meant a lot that everyone was putting so much effort into making it special. He thanked me for helping with decorations. I told him I was glad he was happy. I didn't tell him that the money funding his party was about to vanish. I didn't tell him that by tomorrow night, he'd be standing in an empty hall with confused vendors and angry future in-laws. I just wished him luck. Saturday morning arrived clear and bright. I woke up early. I made coffee. I ate breakfast slowly. I laid out my ceremony clothes, a simple black dress, comfortable shoes, my cap and gown, and the folder where I'd keep my master's certificate. At 11 a.m., my mom called. She reminded me to be at the venue by 2. She said the florist was running late, and she needed me there to direct them. I said, "Of course, Mom. I'll be there." Another lie. But at this point, lying to protect myself felt less like deception and more like survival. At 1 p.m., I got a text from the university communications director. She said the Facebook post was ready to go live at 6:30 and asked if I wanted to see a preview. I looked at it. There was my photo from the lab, smiling in my safety goggles. The caption read, "Congratulations to Maya Kapoor, graduating today with her master's in environmental engineering. Maya's research on sustainable urban water systems has been accepted for publication in the Journal of Environmental Science. We're proud to celebrate her achievement at this evening's hooding ceremony. First in her family to earn a master's degree in this field." I approved it. At 2 p.m., my phone started ringing. It was my mom. I didn't answer. I was already on campus, walking toward the ceremony hall with my gown draped over my arm. The thing about systems, financial systems especially, is that they don't care about your feelings or your family dynamics. They care about rules and numbers and accountability. And once you trigger those systems, they move with a cold, mechanical efficiency that no amount of pleading or explaining can stop. At 2:15, while I was in the dressing area with the other graduating students, my mom called again. Then my dad. Then my mom again. I silenced my phone. Around me, my classmates were laughing, taking photos, adjusting their hoods. The energy was bright and excited. I tried to focus on that. At 2:45, I got a text from Arjun. "Maya, where are you? Mom is freaking out. The florist is here and no one knows where things go." I didn't respond. At 3 p.m., my thesis advisor found me in the hallway. She asked if I was ready. I said I was. She said she'd been reviewing my publication one more time that morning and was genuinely impressed by the methodology. She said I had a real future in this field. I thanked her. I meant it. At 3:30, my phone buzzed with a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. It was the venue manager from Arjun's engagement hall. She sounded confused and apologetic. She said she was trying to reach my parents, but their phones were going straight to voicemail. She said there'd been an issue with the payment. The check they'd given as deposit had bounced. The account it was drawn from had been frozen. She said she couldn't proceed with the event without payment clearance. I told her I wasn't involved in the planning and she'd need to speak with my parents directly. I hung up. At 4 p.m., I checked Facebook on my phone. The university page had over 3,000 followers, most of them students, alumni, faculty, and families from our area. My post wasn't up yet. It was scheduled for 6:30, right when I'd be on stage. At 4:30, my mom called from my dad's phone. I answered this time. She sounded frantic. "Maya, where are you? Why aren't you answering? We need you here right now. The venue is saying there's a problem with payment, and we don't understand what's happening." I kept my voice calm. I said, "Mom, I can't help with that. I'm not in charge of the finances. She said, what do you mean you can't help? Where are you? I said, I'm at my ceremony. There was silence. Then, quietly, dangerously, she said, what ceremony? I said, my hooding ceremony. The one I told you about months ago. The one you told me to skip. She started to say something, but I continued. The payment problem you're having is probably related to the fraud investigation. You should talk to the bank. And maybe a lawyer. I hung up before she could respond. At 5 p.m., the university's communications team did a final check of the ceremony space. Everything was ready. The stage was set. The lighting was perfect. Faculty were arriving in their full academic regalia, hoods and robes from universities all over the country, a rainbow of colors representing different fields and institutions. At 5:30, we lined up backstage. I stood with my cohort, 23 of us who'd made it through 2 years of intense research and coursework. Some of us had become close friends. Others I barely knew. But we'd all earned this moment. At 6 p.m., the ceremony began. The hooding ceremony is smaller than a full graduation, more intimate. There were maybe 200 people in the audience, families, faculty, friends. The lights dimmed. Music played. We walked out in a line and took our seats on stage. I looked out at the audience as I sat down. I scanned the faces, even though I knew my parents wouldn't be there. Part of me had hoped, maybe, that they'd realize their mistake and come anyway. But no, the seats that should have held them were empty. The department chair spoke first. She talked about the value of research, the importance of rigorous inquiry, the responsibility we now carried as scholars in our field. Then, one by one, she called students to the stage. When it was my turn, I heard my name echo through the auditorium. Maya Kapoor, Master of Science in Environmental Engineering. I stood. I walked to the center of the stage. My advisor was waiting there, holding the hood. It was heavier than I expected, rich blue fabric with white silk lining. She draped it over my shoulders, adjusted it carefully, then shook my hand. She leaned in and whispered, "Congratulations, Maya. You earned this." I nodded. I couldn't speak without crying, so I just smiled and walked back to my seat. After all the students had been hooded, the chair announced the special recognitions. My name was called again. Maya Kapoor, for outstanding research and publication in sustainable urban water systems. I stood again. There was applause. I walked forward, received a certificate and a handshake from the dean. He said something congratulatory that I barely heard over the ringing in my ears. When I returned to my seat this time, I let myself breathe. I'd done it. I'd earned my degree. I'd been recognized for my work. And I'd done it without my family's support or approval. I'd done it in spite of them. At 6:30, right on schedule, my phone started buzzing in the pocket of my gown. I glanced at it once. Dozens of notifications. Facebook. Messages. Calls. The post had gone live. While I was sitting on that stage, in my cap and gown, with my hood across my shoulders, my extended family and my parents' friends were seeing my picture on Facebook. They were reading about my degree, my publication, my achievement. They were congratulating my parents in the comments. And somewhere across town, my parents were standing in a near-empty engagement venue, trying to explain to Arjun and Priya's family why the payment had bounced and why nothing was ready. The ceremony ended at 7:30. We stood, processed out, and gathered in the lobby for photos and celebrations. My classmates' families swarmed them with flowers and cameras and congratulations. I stood alone for a moment, watching. Then my advisor found me. She brought 2 of my professors with her. They congratulated me. They asked about my job plans. They told me to stay in touch. We took a photo together, the 4 of us, with my head clearly visible. I posted it to my own Facebook at 7:45 with a simple caption, "Master's degree, earned." At 8 p.m., I walked out to my car. The sun was setting, golden light across the parking lot. I sat in the driver's seat with the door open, my gown still on, the hood still over my shoulders. I felt exhausted and electric at the same time. My phone rang. My mom. I answered. "Why would you do this?" Her voice was shaking, angry and desperate at the same time. "Why would you go to that ceremony behind our back and get the bank involved? You've ruined everything. Arjun's party is canceled. The venue won't work with us. Priya's family is furious. Why would you do this to your brother?" I looked at the degree folder sitting in my passenger seat. I looked at the hood draped across my lap. I thought about all the years I'd spent being invisible, being useful, being the one who helped, who paid, who made things easier for everyone else. I thought about the $22,000 they'd stolen in my name. I said, very calmly, "You used my name and my future to pay for his party. I only took my name and my future back. Because it's my life." There was silence on the other end. Then my dad's voice, in the background, saying something harsh I couldn't quite hear. My mom came back on the line. "You're selfish. You've always been selfish. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? By humiliating your brother." I felt something crack open in my chest, but not the way it used to. This time it was relief, not pain. This time I wasn't the one breaking. I was the one finally whole. I said, "You didn't give me everything. You gave me work and bills and silence. You took my identity and my money and tried to make me invisible. I'm not doing that anymore." I hung up. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the sky turn dark. Then I drove home, carefully, still wearing my gown and hood, and when I got to my apartment, I hung them in my closet next to the outfit I'd wear to my new job in 2 months. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate wildly. I just made tea, sat on my couch, and let myself feel the quiet, steady truth of what I'd done. I'd chosen myself. Finally, the fraud investigation took 6 weeks to resolve. The police confirmed that the loan had been taken out without my consent, that the signature was forged, and that the funds had been transferred to an account my parents controlled. The bank reversed the loan from my credit report and transferred the debt obligation to my parents. They now owed $22,000, plus interest, plus penalties for fraud. The engagement party never happened. Priya's family, understandably, had serious concerns about Arjun's family's financial stability and honesty. The engagement was quietly called off 2 months later. Arjun was devastated. I felt bad for him, genuinely, because he hadn't known about the fraud. But I also knew he benefited from it without question, without asking where the money came from. My parents tried to contact me dozens of times in the first few weeks. Calls, texts, emails, messages through relatives. They wanted me to drop the charges. They said it was a misunderstanding. They said family didn't do this to family. They said I was destroying them. I didn't respond to most of it. When I did, I kept it simple. Talk to your lawyer. This is a legal matter now. Eventually, they hired a lawyer. The lawyer advised them to settle. They agreed to a payment plan for the loan. They sold some jewelry and a car to make the initial payment. They moved to a smaller apartment. I didn't feel triumphant about that. I just felt tired and sad and relieved all at once. The extended family split, predictably. Some people took my parents' side, said I was ungrateful, said I should have handled it privately, said family matters should stay private. Those people, I let drift away. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stopped answering their calls. Other relatives reached out quietly to tell me they understood. Some apologized for not noticing how I'd been treated. A few admitted they'd always thought it was strange how my achievements were downplayed while Arjun's were celebrated. My cousin Neha, who's 3 years younger than me, sent me a message that said, "I always wanted to be like you. Smart and independent. I'm glad you finally put yourself first." That message made me cry more than anything else. I started my job at the environmental consulting firm in June. The work is challenging and meaningful. I'm part of a team designing water conservation systems for low-income housing developments. My boss values my research background. My coworkers treat me like a colleague, not a wallet or a decoration assistant. I moved to a better apartment closer to work. 1 bedroom, big windows, a small balcony where I can grow herbs. It's mine. I pay for it with money I earn. No one can take it from me. I don't talk to my parents. I blocked their numbers after the settlement was finalized. I'm not angry anymore, not the way I was. I'm just done. I spent 26 years trying to earn their approval, trying to be enough, trying to make them see me. I'm not doing that anymore. Arjun tried to reach out once, 6 months after everything fell apart. He sent me an email. It was short. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't know about the loan fraud. He said he missed having me around. He didn't ask me to forgive our parents. He just said he understood if I needed space. I appreciated that. I wrote back, briefly. I said I didn't blame him for their choices. I said I needed time and distance. I said maybe someday we could talk, but not now. He didn't push. I respect that. Some people ask me if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if I feel guilty about the engagement falling apart or my parents' financial struggles. The answer is complicated. I regret that it had to happen at all. I regret that my parents valued appearance over honesty, Arjun's happiness over mine, and money over integrity. I regret growing up in a house where love felt conditional and achievement only mattered when it reflected well on the golden child. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret going to my hooding ceremony. I don't regret exposing the fraud. I don't regret finally saying no. Because here's what I learned. You can't make people value you. You can't sacrifice enough, work hard enough, or stay quiet enough to earn respect from people who've decided you're not worth it. You can only decide that you're worth it and act accordingly. My master's hood hangs in my closet, deep blue and white. Every time I see it, I remember that ceremony. I remember walking across that stage alone, being recognized for my work, choosing my future over their approval. It wasn't the life I thought I'd have. I thought I'd have family at my milestones. I thought I'd have parents who celebrated me. I thought I'd have a brother who saw me as more than backup support. But I have something better now. I have my self-respect. I have work that matters. I have a small circle of friends and colleagues who actually see me. I have an apartment that's mine, a career I built, and a future I control. And I have the knowledge that when it came down to it, when I had to choose between their comfort and my dignity, I finally chose myself. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything.